Howdy folks, Dave here at Thunder Mesa Studio, back working on the ON18 Bandit Canyon Railway once again. In fact, you might call this episode Building the Canyon Part 2, because this week I want to finish everything in this scene. We're going to model some water down inside of those desert water holes down inside the canyon. Going to finish the mine track coming out from the adit in the side of the cliff wall. Going to add some greens to the canyon, some bushes and cacti and things like that, other details. And most importantly, we're going to build a bridge spanning the canyon right here. So hope you'll come along for the ride. This is going to be a fun one. I want to start off today by modeling the water inside the canyon. And to do that, we're going to be using some Envirotex Light 2-part epoxy resin. So I think I've got everything I need here to do our resin pour. I've got an Envirotex Light kit, brand new kit. I've got some clear plastic cups, got some acrylic paint, some black and some green. We're going to mix that in very sparingly. And some stir sticks, paper towels, that kind of thing. I've used this quite a few times before for different projects. And it's a 50-50 mix. It really doesn't get much easier than this. You just mix, equal parts of the hardener and the resin together, and you're good to go. I'm going to add a little bit of color to it. I want the water to be mostly transparent, but I'm going to add a little bit of color to add a little bit more depth to it, but I'll show you that in a minute. There's enough resin here to model a major creek or river. We're not going to need that much. We're just going to need a little bit. And if you don't have a measuring cup handy, let me show you a little trick here. I just put a ruler down inside of this plastic cup, and I made a mark there at 3/4 of an inch. Now I'll take another clear plastic cup and do the same thing, put a mark at 3/4 of an inch. And now we've got our cups to measure with. I just need to fill up this much with the resin and this much with the hardener, and then we'll mix those two together. Now, if you don't get the proportions right, the 50-50, if you've got too much hardener, it'll harden too fast. If you have too much resin, it won't completely harden at all, and you'll end up with a kind of a sticky mess. As long as the two parts are unmixed, they'll remain inert. It won't start to harden or anything yet. So if you need to, do anything, now would be the time. Go to the bathroom, eat a sandwich, whatever it is you need to do before you start mixing these together. But I think we are ready to go. So I'm going to take the hardener and pour all of it into the resin. We're going to take one of our stir sticks and mix this up the best we can, scraping it off the sides. And now I'll take that and we'll pour it back into the first cup, and we'll do the same thing again. Stir it up in here. And we're going to keep doing that, probably do it 2 or 3 times, switching back and forth between the cups to make sure we have the two parts mixed as thoroughly as we can. At this point, I can probably add some color, and I just want like a drop of this green and maybe a drop of this black. This Envirotex doesn't have any odor, by the way, in case you're worried about that. And now we're ready to pour, and I really want to do this before this stuff starts to harden. I'm going to start up here at the uppermost pool. Oh, by the way, I did check all these to make sure there's no leaks. If there's any leaks, any holes in there, the epoxy will run right through and end up where you don't want it. Like that. When you're mixing that epoxy up, you're going to get a lot of air bubbles trapped down inside. And unless you're modeling a soda spring, you really don't want that. We want to get rid of those air bubbles, and the best way to do that is to go over the surface with a heat gun like this on low. The Envirotex is going to cure completely hard in 72 hours, but it'll be hard to the touch within about 3 to 5 hours, depending on the temperature and humidity where you live. And this is really the easiest kind of water to model. Still calm pools and ponds like this, because once the epoxy is cured, you're done. You don't have to go back and add any ripples or whitewater effects or waterfalls or anything like that. So once the Envirotex is cured, our water pockets are done. I'm actually modeling these pools here after a real place that's nearby, right across the valley in Sedona. Up in Soldier Pass Canyon, there's a place known as the Seven Sacred Pools, and there are 7 water holes in a row, like a string of pearls, down through the canyon. Very popular hiking and jeeping destination if you ever come out to Sedona. Well, I don't want to just sit around doing nothing while I wait for the epoxy to cure, so I'm going to move on to the next project on the list, and that is the mine car track coming out of the adit right here. It's going to be a little dump trestle, and meet you over at the workbench and I'll show you what I got going. So I've designed and cut some ON18 trestle deck parts. Got some bridge tie strips and some stringers. These are 6x9 stringers. I cut all of this out of some 1/8 of an inch thick basswood. So these ties measure out as 6x6s, which is a good size for ON18. And the bridge ties are about a scale 4.5 feet long. And as usual, first I'm adding a little bit of distress to the top, giving them some more pronounced wood grain. And I've got a pad of paper towels and my handy dandy wood stain made from some kiwi black shoe dye mixed with isopropyl alcohol. This will give it a nice desert, worn, weathered look. Well, you guys weren't looking. I went ahead and cut and stained some parts for the single trestle bent that's going to be under this. Also, let's see, I've got some 3/16 of an inch diameter rounds for the uprights. Got some 4x6s for sway braces, 8x8 for the cap. Now on a trestle like this, on any kind of trestle, usually the stringers are placed so they'll be directly underneath the rails and support the weight of the train going over. This is just a really short section of trestle. It's only going to be 3 inches long. Now I want to add some rails to our little dump trestle, and I've got a section of Pico HON 30 flex track. It's 9mm gauge, same as N scale, so the 18-inch gauge and O scale. So I need to remove the ties between here and there. Just cut through the webbing, and we'll pop that off just by pulling down like that. Okay, I've got a coat of my favorite Rust-Oleum dark brown camo on there, and I've just squeezed out a tiny little bit of 2-part 5-minute epoxy. And what I want to do is apply a thin coat to the back of the rails here. Now I want to carefully position this, and I've got a little block here, which is cut out of some 1/4 inch basswood, and it's exactly 9mm long. And this will help me to keep the track engaged. Also got my NMRA N-scale standards gauge, which of course the track measurement is 9mm. Looking good. We'll prop this up here, shim that just temporarily, and let that epoxy set up. Now back over here at the scene, I'm starting to place some plant life here and there. Got some kind of evergreen ground foam, dark green, to represent low-growing bushes like manzanita and shrub oak, things like that. Got some cactus here. Prickly pear cactus from Pegasus Scale Models. These are some excellent injection molded castings that they sell. Sometimes I'll just poke a little hole down into the foam, give that plant or that cactus a place to grab on. So even though there's water here, there wouldn't be that many plants because of the flash floods coming through and just scouring everything away every time a big thunderstorm rolled through. So only in little protected places like behind this rock formation, things like that. These little clumps are from Silfler, the Scenic Express, and I'm just gluing them in place with a PVA Eileen's tacky glue. You usually find a lot more plant life growing up on slopes like this. All kinds of bushes and cacti and things. Maybe even some flowers. It's the variety that makes it work. The one thing you will almost always find in these dry wash canyons is logs and other debris that have been washed down from higher elevations. Alright, I think that's probably enough for right now. Alright, that epoxy's had a chance to cure. These are some micro-engineering small rail spikes. I'm going to be driving them in with my Xuron rail spiking tool. Push it in like so. And then press it flush. And I'm going to do this probably a spike on every other, or on every tie, but on every other side. So a spike here, then a spike inside, spike outside, spike inside, all the way down to the end. And when you're all done with the spiking, it should look a lot like that. Now I want to add a little stop down here at the end of the track. Got a little yellow glue on here and got some 4x6, and I'll stain those up after the glue dries and glue a tie right across the top like that. Now to finish this off, got a couple of gnarly nut bolt washer castings. These look like about 2-inch, 2.5-inch bolts. One there, one there. And then for good measure, I added a couple of lengths of 2x4 to the end also. So back here on these plastic ties, I'm dry brushing on some lighter tones, a little bit of apple barrel granite gray, a little bit of territorial beige, just on the ties that are going to show coming out of the adit. Now I'll just come back and hit the rails and the spikes with some pan pastels. I've got some dark rust and some light rust. I usually put the dark on first, come back with the light rust. I've decided that this is going to be a dummy track. It's not going to be powered, so I can weather the heck out of the rail and not worry about it. Now I'm starting on the trestle bent, and I'm using an old template. This is actually one that I made for Calico Mountain, but it'll work fine for this. Now I can add the 4x6 cross braces. I'll add some nail holes. Now, all the while I've been building the mine track, I've also been working on this a little by little while I wait for things to dry. This is going to be the mine tunnel, and this is the floor of the tunnel right here. Just made it out of some 1-inch foam, so the track will come back through here, and there will be tunnel walls coming up on each side. So, you know, if you look from either side of the layout back into the adit, all you will see is mine tunnel back in here. To hold the track down, I'm going to be using some liquid nails. And I take a piece of cardboard and spread that out. Now I will bring the track in from the rear. Make sure that's as straight as I can get it. Now put a little weight on there until that glue sets up. And while I wait for that to dry, I can start building the interior walls of the mine tunnel. Now, of each of these mine walls, I've cut a little notch right here, and that's to receive an 8x8 timber. And this will be right up towards the front end, so anyone looking into the tunnel will see those timbers and just assume that square set timbering goes all the way back, even though it doesn't. Now I can glue in these 8x8 timbers. I thought it might be cool if there was a lone flickering lantern back inside of the mine. So I've got a 3mm yellow flickering LED. You can pick these up on eBay and other places. I get mine mostly from a company called Lighthouse LEDs, and they're already pre-wired and ready to install. That is, they already have a resistor soldered on, so you don't have to worry about that. I've measured back about 4 inches from the front. I want the light to be visible, but not the bulb, if you know what I mean. And we can thread the wires through there. Then I like to cut up a little slit at the foam and push those wires down in there so it'll stay where I put it without any need for glue or anything like that. But I am going to put a piece of black gaff tape over the top of that. Probably be a good idea to test this out. Okay, I got some adhesive on there. Slide that back. Now before I put the other side in, I want to dirt this in. I'll use a big soft paintbrush. Get that down in there and spread it out a little bit. I'll mist some wet water on there. And then some diluted white glue over all of that. And while that's still wet, go ahead and put the other side in. I want to do it while it's still wet because then I can just shove that excess dirt over with the foam. Then I can glue the roof on. Now I'll hook the wires up to the 9-volt DC bus. Flick the power on. See what we got. As for the back, I'm not going to glue this in place. I'm just going to pin it. Because you never know when I might need to access this. Now to properly place the trestle bent, I've created another little template, and now I can bring this over here and match it up underneath the trestle and poke holes down into the foam to receive the legs. Now I've sanded back this top cap so I can fit the bend under here at about a 45-degree angle. And then I can have a couple of angled braces coming down like that. Now this is a pair of Grantline Copal side dump ore cars. These are actually HON 30, but I've modified them to work in ON 18, and I think they make a great looking little mine car for a scene like this. Now I've got a ladder here from Bar Mills and have that going up to the mine from this ledge. Alright, that's giving me kind of Temple of Doom vibes. I like it. Well, now I'm ready to build the big bridge across the canyon. This is a 48-foot span right here. That's 12 inches to you and me. And I thought a lot about the kind of bridge that I want to go here. I thought maybe a steel bridge or a truss bridge, or maybe even some sort of cantilevered trestle. Really not a great spot for just a traditional trestle. So what I finally decided on was a combination truss and trestle bridge. Well, there'll be a little truss in the middle and some supports going down on each side of the canyon like that. Should look pretty cool, and I'm excited to get started on it. So I've already gone ahead and distressed and stained all of the pieces I'm going to need, well, most of them anyway. And these are the same basic laser cut parts that I used to build the mine dump track. So I'm going to use those for the bridge deck, and we're going to build that first. So I need to turn these tie strips upside down. With these laser cut parts, this should go pretty quickly. So I'm lining up the stringers with the webbing and the ties. The tie sections are 3 inches long and these stringers are 4 inches long. So I need 4 individual tie sections and 3 of these stringer sections to make up a 48-foot bridge. I designed these stringers with half-lap joints. Now let me show you the way these trusses go together. I'm rather proud of how I figured out how to do this. So it's relatively quick and easy, but will still look good. Basically, I've got these 2 laser cut sides, and the wood grain matches the diagonals. And then I've got this centerpiece right here, which is made out of some 35/1000th of an inch thick laser board. And it does 2 things. One, it has truss rods. It's mainly to show the truss rods going through there. And 2, it creates a gap in between the diagonal bracing for a more realistic look, like so. So this is a layered construction, like we often do with laser cut parts. This will go even quicker if I build both of these at the same time. And then I can glue on the opposite side. Now the only problem with this technique, as some of you may have already guessed, is the wood grain, right? We got the wood grain going in the correct direction on these diagonals, but not on the top and bottom chords. Fortunately, there's a real easy fix for that. We just use some 1x6 as veneer on each one of those, on all sides, both sides, and magically the wood grain's all going in the right direction. And when you're all done, it should look something like that. Well, now I want to tie the 2 sides of my truss together. And I've got some 6x9s. I've created a really quick template here with some foam core and some double stick tape on there. And one at this end. And on the top, put one here, another 6x9, and these are the ones that are actually going to support the bridge deck. And then a couple more, basically centered over each of these cross braces. And now I want to turn the whole thing over and add some X bracing down here with some 3x6. Since this is ON18, all of the lumber I'm using is just a little bit smaller than what I would use for ON30. It's still the same scale, but everything is more lightly built. Now with the truss complete, the bridge deck goes right on top of it like that. But I don't want to glue it on there just yet. Actually, I think I want to spike the rail, the existing rail on the layout to the bridge deck, and then I'll come in and install this from underneath. So the first thing I need to do is remove the existing ties. Now I'm going to slide in a piece of foam which I cut to fit this gap precisely. And then the bridge deck will be on top of that, and the foam will support the deck as I drive the spikes in. And before I spike it down, I'll paint the rail real quick. Alright, that paint has had a chance to dry. And I mixed up another small batch of 5-minute epoxy. I start applying that to the bottom of the rails, just like I did for the minecart track. Now I can slide the deck underneath here and move this up, clamp it in place. And I'll be checking the gauge, obviously, on the track as this sets up. Got my track gauge block, my 9mm block, and my NMRA N-scale track gauge. Epoxying the track in place takes all the pressure off when applying the spikes then. Now with that epoxy hardened, I can come in and spike these rails down at a more leisurely pace. So it always takes a minute. Even doing it the way I'm doing it, 2 spikes in each tie, alternating inside and outside of the rail. Takes a while to do it right, and fortunately I find the process meditative and relaxing and rewarding when it all comes out nicely. Now I can clean the paint off the top of the rails with some mineral spirits. I love it when a plan comes together. Now I can pull out this foam, finish this bridge. Apply some glue to the bottom of these stringers. We'll glue this in from the bottom, right in the middle. I've had a finger clamp for a few minutes. Now I've got these kind of Stonehenge looking braces. Go right here, one on each side. And now I need to build 4 trestle bents of varying lengths. I need a straight one here, a short straight one here, and then one coming down at an angle here and an angle here. Now even though the legs are all going to be different lengths on these, I've already taken some measurements, the geometry is basically the same, and that means that I can use the same jig to build all 4 trestle bents, just cut them at different lengths. Once again, I've already cut and stained all of the scale lumber that I'm going to need. The top sills are 9x9s or 3/16 square. This is a pile trestle, which means that the legs are, piles driven down into the ground rather than square timbers. So I'm using some 3/16 of an inch rounds for those. And I'm going to start on the smallest, or the shortest trestle bent first. And to create these angles on the top of the piles, I used my disc sander. Best 70 bucks I ever spent at Harbor Freight. Just set it up with the guide at the proper angle, and I was able to sand all of the tops of the piles to that exact same angle so they fit on that top sill perfectly. Now I can put the angled braces on. These are some 3x6. I'll just flip this over. To install these, I just need to poke some holes down into the foam to receive the legs. A little glue on the bottom of that stringer, and then press these down into the foam. Bring it upright. Now, this little shelf of rock right here is what we call geologically convenient. Just happened to be there. Great how that worked out. The best thing I've found to poke holes into the foam, you start with a pencil. Then my Phillips screwdriver works really well. I made all the legs about 1/8 of an inch longer than they actually need to be so they can sit down in the foam. And this holds them perfectly, and I don't really need to even put any glue down in there. Now for these angled ones, same thing, except I put the holes in at an angle to match the angle on the truss here, so everything will line up. This one's going to be a little tricky, I think. I also went ahead and made a couple of retaining wall bridge abutments, one for each side. And these are made from some good old dollar store coffee stir sticks. I don't think I told you about this bridge down in the canyon. I built this while I was waiting for some other stuff to dry. And this is just a little footbridge across here. And it's a couple of logs lashed together with rope, planks over the top, and then just a little thin rope handrail for the adventurous that want to cross there. Now I'll add some real dirt here. Carry that over right onto the top of the retaining wall. Inevitably, a lot of this is going to fall down into the canyon, but that's alright. That's what chop backs are for. Get that little spritz with some wet water. And glue it down with some diluted white glue. Now I just want to glue in a few larger rocks here and there, places where they might have fallen down the cliff. Now just a little final weathering, and do some kind of brownish gray chalk on the bridge ties up here, and that'll hide any of the remaining shine from that epoxy I put on. Then I like to take some black, just straight black chalk, and run it down the center between the rails, because you know, steam engines are dirty. There's soot and and they drip oil and everything else. They're just big dirty machines. Lastly, take my pan pastels, add a little rust to the rails, some on these truss rods. I'll start with the dark rust. Some of that's going to stain onto the ties, and that's just fine because that's what would happen in real life too. Again, come back with the light rust and just punch that up here and there. Now just a light spritz of clear matte finish over all that. Now I just need to clean the rail head one more time with some odorless mineral spirits. And we can see how the bridge looks with a train running over it. And that's going to be a wrap on this one, folks. We're actually running a little long today because we covered 3 full projects in this video. Modeled the desert water holes, the minecart dump track, and finished the bridge across Bandit Canyon itself. I want to thank you all so much for watching, especially those of you who made it all the way to the end here with me. If it's your first time here, I hope you'll subscribe and hit that notification bell so YouTube will let you know when the next videos are coming from Thunder Mesa Studio. And the next time out, I think we're going to be finishing off the cliff face on the front of the layout here and finding a clever way to hide these speakers. So I hope you'll tune in for that. Until then, you can also follow Thunder Mesa over on Instagram at thunder.mesa and see what's new and happening on the Thunder Mesa Studio website at thundermesa.studio. As always, a huge shout out and thank you to our Patreon members who help to make these videos possible. Keep moving forward, my friends. Adios for now.